This is MasterMinds, where we talk with leaders from many industries on how mental health and stress has impacted their lives. Many people believe that good health is centered on the body and suffer silently from poor mental health, anything from anxiety to depression to chronic work stress. Only a select few know that the core of good leadership and healthy living lies in the mastery of our minds. In this podcast, host Bjorn Lee and his guests share their stories of fighting stress and achieving mental resilience. The goal? To encourage others to do the same. Here's Bjorn.
Welcome back to another episode of the MasterMinds podcast series. Today's guest is Professor Jayanth Narayanan. He's a former entrepreneur, researcher, and tenured professor at National University of Singapore's Business School. He's also a very dear friend of mine. His research and teaching interests are in the areas of decision-making, negotiations, and influence. He has also conducted research to understand the biological basis of human behavior in the workplace. He has done some of the earliest research also on understanding the role of mindfulness for leaders in organizations. So without further ado, Jay, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Bjorn. Thanks for having me. Look forward to this chat.
Yes, I look forward to it too. We're so honored to have you here today. And I know you are really a pioneer and trailblazer as well in combining business topics with mindfulness. So right now, it's in this pandemic, it has really wreaked havoc on the business world. So in layman terms for our audience, could you share some of the latest research work you've done in business, the pandemic, and mindfulness?
Thanks, Bjorn. Thanks for this opportunity. I have been thinking about mindfulness for a very, very long time, right? So even before mindfulness was cool and trendy, but that has changed a lot. And as you might well be aware that now mindfulness is seen as a very legitimate and important tool available to organizations to enable well-being, workplace engagement. So the pandemic has been nothing short of a blessing in disguise for my skills. Although one wouldn't wish this for the planet. So very quickly, very early on in the pandemic, it became clear to me that mindfulness could offer a potential remedy to all of the mental health pandemic that's going to come beyond the infectious disease that we're talking about. So we started work on looking at the effects of a mindfulness intervention on how people can cope with the stress of the pandemic, as well as how people could work better with each other at the workplace. So we did a study where we recruited about 100 participants, and we put them through an intervention where they did either a mindfulness practice or a mind wandering practice for a 10-day period. And then we looked at how this affected them in terms of their mental health. And what we did find was exactly that. We found that people that engaged in a mindfulness practice were able to actually cope with the stress. Those who actually had a mindfulness daily practice coped with the information they were receiving. So we are receiving so much information about the pandemic. And right now, maybe people have gotten a little bit fatigued with this information. But in February, every day was something new coming out. So what we found in that study was that our Wuhan participants that were in the mindfulness condition actually reacted less to the stressor.
And just to clarify, these participants are in Wuhan, China.
They are in Wuhan, China. Wow. They're all employees in Wuhan, China.
It's the beauty of a global network of
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We managed to put together the study in a week, and we ran it for 10 days. And we found some remarkable results. And then we followed that up with another study where we tried to replicate the exact same design and pattern with a group of remote workers from the UK. And we find exactly the same kind of pattern. So people that, here in this study, we measured mindfulness. We didn't intervene. We measured people that are naturally more mindful. They seem to cope better with the stressors of the environment. So essentially what this is telling us is that mindfulness offers us a resource to deal with the stressors that are coming at us in this very, very unique times that we live in. So there are a couple of other projects as well, Bjorn, but we will dig into that as we go along.
And I've also been following some of your other work in your research in business and specifically performance as well. I love how creative you are in identifying research topics, right? And specifically, I was very intrigued by one of your 2012 studies, right? And I will quote the specific title for the benefit of the audience. And let me know what you all think of this title. The title is Mindfully Eating Raisins Improves Negotiation Success, colon, the effect of mindfulness on negotiation performance. Now I read that title and I almost put aside all my to-dos to read it, Jay.
Right. Thanks,
Can
Bjorn.
you can you tell us more? Like what went into this study and what does that? What can you share? About mindfulness and negotiation.
Thank you. That was that was really bringing together two sides of my life, right? Like, so there was this parallel track of mindfulness research I was engaging in, and then there was this other track which was negotiations. So this paper was about how, as a negotiator, one of the things that happens to you as a negotiator when you get into a negotiation is your mind is all over the place. You have anxiety, you're concerned that you're not quite clear what your goals are, you're all over the place, and then most people try kind of wing it, right? Like they just walk in, they know broadly what they need, and then they say, yeah, I'm going to figure it out. Either they figure it out or they just get what they get and they walk away, and that's it, that's done, right? So negotiation is one of those things where you don't get immediate feedback, you don't quite know how well you've done, because everyone pretends that they've given you a good deal while you may not have got as good a deal as you think you've got. So there are all these kind of iron curtains in negotiations. So what we thought is that could we actually get people to prepare differently going to a negotiation rather than like just prepare, which is look at the issues, look at your goals. Could we also just calm down? Could we also get them to calm down? But we focus on the raisin because I like the raisin eating exercise, because what happens with a generic mindfulness practice is that some people are just not ready for it because they are not the mind is just so all over the place that it's just quite hard to rein them in. But with a raisin, since there is the explosion of senses that happens in your taste buds, you can get people, even novices who are very new to mindfulness, hooked in through their tactile sensations. Of course, if you're allergic to raisins, it won't work. But most people are not allergic to raisins, like I've discovered over the years.
Just in case they are allergic to raisins, what are some alternatives?
So we could, we just tell them to, we didn't have anyone in the study, but in my class, sometimes I do have people that are allergic to raisins, and I tell them, put a Mentos in or whatever it is, whatever that you can actually take in your mouth. And the raisin I like because you put it in your mouth, you don't immediately get the sensory overload. It's just there until you really take that first bite and that juice spurts out of the raisin. And it's such a commonplace experience. This is why people find that exercise quite powerful, because it's a normal act. It's something you do every day. But the moment you bring attention and a beginner's mind and a sense of awareness to it, there is this, you're literally unlocking hedonic value out of a very, very simple act. So it really kind of shakes people up. So that's why I really like that exercise. So we got people to do this exercise, and then we got them to negotiate. And lo and behold, dyads, which actually had practiced the raisin eating exercise together, outperformed the dyads that had not. So dyads, which actually meditate, are pairs that negotiate mindfully, actually unlock greater value together. They don't leave value on the table. So that seems to suggest that not only is it you win, but you also help the other party win, because you bring like a cooperative orientation to the negotiation.
So would you need both would you need both parties of the negotiation to be mindful as well, or does it work with only one side?
That's a great question. So far, our work has not been able to show the benefit when only one party is mindful. We find that both parties need to do it. When only one party does it, it's a bit hard to isolate the effects, because we don't know whether, I'm giving away too much value or I'm taking too much value. So we haven't yet quite gotten our head around how do we look at this individually? All our analysis is at the level of the dyad.
Interesting.
So of course, the punchline for that then becomes, not only should you negotiate, should you be mindful, but you should also get other people to be mindful, and you bring like that kind of mindful environment to the conversation. So which I think is a positive message. I think in the times that we live in, I think we've lived in this world where there's too much about winning for myself and what is in it for me. So I think we have to move to a more collective grammar where we can both win and we can both succeed. So maybe our results are pointing in that direction somewhat.
Yeah. I love how this research seems to be a leading indicator rather than a lagging indicator of how to really get ahead in negotiation, right? Because it's negotiation is, after all, the bedrock of every productive business relationship. So I think with this study, I think perhaps I'm just throwing things out of my head. One way could be to look at how could you foster a conducive environment for a dyad, right? A pair of business people, a party, to bring some mindfulness into that conversation before the actual negotiation starts. Because many times people only focus on the hard terms. They don't think about the attitudinal, the environmental factors. Am I right in?
Absolutely, Bjorn. You hit the nail on the. So essentially, like we have to choose the setting, right? Like we often think of people when they hear the word negotiation, they think of winning.
Yeah.
They think of winning somehow, and they think
battle,
of something.
Right? Yeah.
It's a battle, right? Like we have to replace that with a grammar where it's actually joint problem solving. It's joint discovery. So it's joint discovery of value. So the moment you reframe that and you create an environment that's conducive, which is salubrious, where there is, you don't have to close your eyes and kind of do a breathing practice or eat mindful raisins. That's of course in the lab, but in a field setting, you would slow down the conversation, just, have some nature around you, maybe, just create a setting where there's not too many distractions, switch off. In fact, I've always wanted to do the study, maybe I will soon, where I want people to turn off their mobiles and all their distracting devices before they start a negotiation, because just the mere presence of this distracting piece of evil just changes the nature of our cognition. So I often leave my phone deliberately behind when I have to go and have a really deep conversation, and I personally find I have deeper conversations if my mobile is not giving me notification.
So you have had a very successful career, right? You have been an entrepreneur, you are now an academic, you are blending the two fields together. Could you bring us back in time, right? And talk about when was the lowest period of your life? Yeah. What is that, proverbial crash? And how did you come out of it? How did you overcome that difficult, if you don't mind sharing? Yeah.
Absolutely. So for me, I think there were a couple of low points. But if I were to pick one, it was the time when I was doing my PhD. And I was a grad student in London, and I was in a particularly difficult relationship, and nothing was going my way. Everything was very difficult. I already had a mindfulness practice, but it just was. Everything was just falling apart. Like my personal life was falling apart. I was not making much headway in my professional career. I was miserably poor in London. And all of that was just wore me down for a few years. So I think, it came to a point where I was kind of not making progress on my PhD. And I was in a very, very high stress school, like where there was a lot of expectation placed on you. I was at the Lung Business School. And I also was in a relationship that was going nowhere. It was just, it was not a very good marriage. So we were kind of figuring out how to part, but we just didn't quite know how, because there was all kinds of stigma associated with that in the culture I came from. And I was very poor. I just didn't have any money. So all of that together, I think it was a particularly difficult time. I still remember very vividly the possibly the lowest point in my life was I was walking through Regent's Park in London on a cold winter day, and I was listening to this song crying in the rain. I'll do my crying in the rain. And as I was listening to that song, the rain poured and I just started to cry, like complete helplessness. Like I just didn't know how I could get out of this hole I was in. I've never been someone who considered self-harm or anything, but that was one time where these thoughts did cross my mind. I was like, maybe this would just be easier if this all finished right here, right now.
Yeah.
Right. So, but it just didn't go away. I mean, it was there for a period of time. And then I think really what kept me going was some sort of, relief I would find when I was on that cushion every day. Like something just lifted, something dropped, even if it was just a little bit. And every day it would just drop. And then it was not linear. It was sometimes 5 steps forward and 10 steps backwards.
Mm-hmm.
But then there were days when you just felt, oh my God, I've left that. This is a new chapter that's just gone. So coming to Singapore was a huge change for me. It shifted, like, because I had a job and then I had like a proper income. So those things started to shift slowly.
Thank you very much for sharing that very heartfelt and recount of your difficult period. I think I learned a lot from there and saw some parallels with my own background as well, some of my experiences. It's really helpful sometimes to reflect that on that. So and I appreciate you being so upfront and honest with and open with us as well. You're right. I mean, like there are flickers of moments sometimes where people may even think of self-harm, right? And in typical society, we never bring out these difficult topics as well.
Absolutely. And and since this is going to reach a number of people, I think like you rightly said, we should destigmatize these topics and conversations, right? Just because someone looks well put together, it doesn't mean that they do not have struggles that's gone behind that, right? So the reason I'd like to open up about this is because people when they interact with me now, they may have no sense that there were these difficult times that I went through, but just to legitimize that, and to say, like, find something to do that breaks the routine.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think even just shake your body, just move your body a bit, like just walk somewhere that you have not walked, or talk to someone that you have not talked to before. So just to break a pattern. So mental health very much is like finding something that works. And for you it might be walk in the park. For me it might be just moving. So I found, like, recently during this pandemic, there were days when I felt very low, and just like putting on some headsets and music and just shaking my body up a bit and just moving that energy suddenly makes me feel better. Like, and I'm like, oh wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So just do whatever the hell that makes you feel good. Like, just move and shake the system up however you can, and that just shifts the energy.
So what are some other, I mean, you have started, you read my mind and you've started going to talk about some of the daily routines you have. So what are some other micro practices you have done during this time? Because I know that you had a very heavy workload doing the teaching, balancing that with your research studies, and of course, like your family and your personal life as well. Any other tips for our big listeners?
Yeah. So for me, I do have a routine, but I'm very compassionate with myself if the routine has to shift a bit. I journal a lot. I wake up in the morning every day and I write 3 pages of free text. I just journal. That's something I try and not miss that. That's really sanity creating for me. I try and walk in nature almost every day.
Sorry, if I may bring you back to your 3 pages, because I know that you mentioned this in our last conversation.
Yes.
You were inspired by someone about this, right? Could you go into
Yes.
it more? Yes.
Yeah, I will. So I heard about this from Elizabeth Gilbert of the Eat, Pray, Love fame. And she talked about this in a, she's an amazing author and one of the most beautiful with words. So she was on I listened to her on a podcast with Tim Ferriss, and she talked about the morning pages. So I kind of got curious about the morning pages, and it comes from this methodology called from Julia Cameron, who has this book called The Artist's Way. And essentially, the premise of this is that inside us, there's a little person that is sitting there judging everything that we do. And it's also this little sensor, and this sensor has been fed and overfed over time. Our teachers, our parents, and many of our peer group, we've actually really fed this inner person in us to a point where we don't quite know when is it our spirit speaking, when is it this little person speaking.
The mini remote control, right?
Remote control, censoring voice,
right,
that tells you, you're no good, you're not good enough, you're not creative, you'll never succeed, whatever it is, negative beliefs. And they also manifest as other people, right? Like you will find that you'll have a boss who says that to you, you'll have a spouse who says that to you. So all of these are just feeding that little I in me that doubts my capabilities, right? So what the morning pages does is it exhausts the sensor. So what you have to do is every day you wake up, you write, but you write not with purpose. You write to just let out your thoughts. And this little voice comes up and says, this is crap, or what the hell are you writing? There's no use, you're wasting your time. You have to learn to ignore that voice and exercise this muscle of self-belief. And there are days when it's absolutely, like today was one of those days. For whatever reason, I didn't sleep very well last night because, I had something not very salubrious to eat last night. So, and that caused disturbance in sleep. So morning I was like not able to write. So you just power through that, right? Like you just keep that voice aside and you just keep writing. You keep writing for 3 pages and you never read what you write. This is not an exercise where you go back and you read and you transcribe and it becomes a book. No, this is an exercise which is really, the metaphor I like to use is it cleans your pipes. It cleans your pipe. It's literally like a plumbing system that just declogging the pipe. It just removes that blocks. I find that it has made me creative. It's made me get in touch with my deeply like kind of, I've always been creative, but not in a way that's fluent, right? Like now it's a little bit more fluent, a little bit more risk-taking, a little bit more courageous. So that's what tends to happen with the morning job pages. And I recommend it for everyone. I mean, keep it up for 12 weeks, if you can keep 12 weeks, I mean, that's what Julia Cameron recommends. I don't think I ever want to give it up. I started about 10 weeks ago and I'm coming to the end of the 12 weeks, but I'm like, Bjorn, I'm starting another group now, which is going to go through this for 12 weeks together again, just to keep the practice rolling. So it's an incredible way to get in touch with our deeper selves that we ignore, and we pay more attention to this little person that seems to tell us we are not good enough. We don't deserve the success that we deserve.
That's a very good check on sometimes what we call as our own inner ego, right? The inner self.
Absolutely.
That we.
Which probably, I'm sure you have like self-compassion practices. On your apps, and one of the reasons why people can't quite access that very easily is this little voice that seems to hold us back.
Yes, we all have the little voice, our own unique one. That's great. I'll just move on to my next question, which is really about the let's wear the hat of being a futurist. Actually, you will be wearing the hat, right? If you have a crystal ball for 2050, 30 years from now, right? Knowing what you know now, knowing some of the pioneering research that you have been working on, or from your fellow peers in academia as well, where the world is going, what does the workplace look like? What might the workplace look like? Both the good and the bad. What might the workplace look like? And in 2050, something that may build on some of your work that you have in conflict resolution, whether it's in mindfulness or leadership. What does that 2050 leader look like? What does that 2050 employee look like?
So one thing I do know is that a couple of things that I think I can see trends towards, and this may not be something that is the zeitgeist, right? Everybody is talking of remote work, and this is going to stay, and this is. I don't think it's going to stay. Okay, in my view, uh, I think some things can be done remotely, and they will be done remotely, and they will, which also will change the nature of the psychological contract between employers and employees. But largely, work, I think, serves a very important purpose for us. Work provides some sort of social purpose, social meaning. So we don't just go to work because we make a living. We also go to work because it meets our socio-emotional needs. It creates community. It creates a sense of larger purpose. It creates a sense of identity. So all of those things are not going to be happening if we just sit in our study rooms in Singapore, and like you and I are in Singapore, but like you're in your study room, I'm in mine, and like you're in your office, I'm in mine, and that model, I think, will slowly start to dissipate once this virus starts to go away, right? Like, so once we have a vaccine, or once there is herd immunity, some of those will be reversible, right? Like, we're going to come back now. But having said that, we now know that many things can happen remotely. We don't need like the physical workspace. So for example, if you're building if you're in cloud computing, and you're building products on the cloud, you don't all have to come to CBD and sit on the 17th floor of a very high-fi. You don't have to do that.
That's right.
So you might have this sort of hybrid work arrangement where you will still have workspaces for people to come and socialize and engage in that camaraderie that you need, but also go away and spend time in wherever they need to be. So you'll have this more fluid workspaces. So there is going to be a bit more hybrid work, but it's not going to be purely remote. That because it just doesn't serve a core purpose, core need for us as people, right? That's one trend I see. The second trend I see is that people are going to choose work that they want to do rather than work that will make a living, especially because if we move towards this universal basic income that many people have talked about, especially in the more affluent countries. But still, you need to work. Even if you have an income. Now, what does that mean? If you already have the money that you need to live a good life, then the question becomes, how do I express who I am through my work? So you have to find, what are you intrinsically motivated by? So this means that there will be a whole slew of people that will focus on that. And there will also be a whole slew of people that will help others find that. Coaches and self-help groups, or whatever it is, art and many things that we will. So there will be this whole class of people that will live from purpose, live for meaning, live to express who they are. But that's not going to be the majority, right? That's still going to be the world still needs like food. It needs many things that we need. The healthcare. You can't. That has to all go on. So there will be all of that, but there will be this class of people that can pursue that, and that might mean that you're going to have a more interesting variation in terms of how people think of as careers. So I don't think of careers as being like 30, 40 years in the future. It'll be more like 10, 15 years. Even in those 10, 15 years, you'll do multiple things, and then you'll have a gap year or whatever it is, and then you'll go on to do other things. And we live longer as well because our health is improving, and if a virus doesn't kill us or a bacteria doesn't kill me, the next whatever number of years.
I think, is there any last words that you may have for the leaders who might be taking us towards their hypothetical future?
Yeah, I think, this is a great opportunity to start, practicing compassion and empathy. I think if this set of events is not triggering that instinct in leaders, I don't know what else will. The grammar of care, the grammar of can I be there for those that are not as fortunate as I am? Those sorts of mindsets, I think, are really going to be critical. It's in the past, I think it was a luxury, but I think in the future, that's what will define your leadership. So really to find that grammar of care and compassion in the way we lead and in the way we support others that we are leading is very important. But in the process, do not ignore the goose that's laying the golden eggs, which is you as a leader. So have a just as you take care of your body, which is very visible in the mirror, take care of the mind, and the mind is actually more important than the body, because if the mind is there, the body will follow. A healthy mind actually leads to a healthy body. So the nature of that psychosomatic relationship. So taking care of the mind really is so important. And now nobody can say, I don't know how to do that. I mean, you really have no excuse. All you have to do is reach out, and there are hundreds of ways in which you can take care of your mental health, and not to be afraid to ask for help, and not to be afraid to reach out and say, hey, I'm struggling, I need some help. I mean, that's so important in these times. The stoicism, which is actually a misunderstood word, stoicism actually means willingness to be vulnerable. Actually, anyway, people don't quite get that, but you don't need to put up with suppression. You can actually reach out and seek help, and it is available all around, and we support each other. I think that's such an important message, I think, for people to take away.
Yeah, and on that note of positivity, thank you so much for joining our show. I think we have gained a lot and learned from your wisdom as well. And I'll see you around. Thank you so much, Jay. Have a great day ahead.
Thanks, Bjorn. Thanks. That was a wonderful conversation. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you.